Hi everyone, Anthony Morganti here. I am sure you probably know that several years ago, Adobe added new masking to all of the versions of Lightroom. Over the years, they've added to it and they've improved it, and I think most of us probably have a favorite mask or two that we often use. In today's video, I want to show you how I use Lightroom's masking on several different types of images. The first type of image is an image that has a sky in it, but also has a strong subject. It could be a landscape shot, it could be a travel shot, it could be really any type of shot, as long as it has a sky in it and a strong subject. The second type of image is more of a landscape shot. It doesn't necessarily have a strong subject, but it has a sky and land in it. The third type of shot is a wildlife shot, and the fourth type of shot is an image that has a person or people in it. I do masking on all of these types of shots, and it's slightly different because of the type of shot it is. Now, first of all, I want to mention, as you could see, I'm working in Lightroom Classic. What I'm going to be showing you, though, applies to any version of Lightroom that you might be using. Now, first things first, when I have an image, I shoot RAW, so I'll have a RAW file. What I'll do is I do some global adjustments first. And what I'll do first is noise reduction if the image needs it. This specific image was shot with an ISO of 1600, and if I hit the I key a couple times, you'll notice it says Enhance-NR-DNG. That means I already did noise reduction on this. I went to the Detail tab on the original Nikon RAW file, and this denoise button luckily was active. I was able to use this AI noise reduction on it. I do that first if it needs it, and if it's available. It's not available for all RAW files. Fortunately, for all the cameras I own, it is available as long as I'm shooting RAW. So I'll remove noise first, and that's what I did here. Then with this resultant DNG file, what I'll do is I'll go, if it needs lens corrections because it was DSLR, I'll click these check boxes. If you're shooting with a mirrorless camera, you probably don't have to worry about that because the lens corrections are built in. Then I'll go to the Basic tab, and I'll determine what profile I'm going to use. Most often that will be Adobe Color, and I'll adjust white balance if needed. This image I didn't need to do either. I just kept the default Adobe Color and the default as shot white balance. Next, I'll adjust tone. You can see for this image, I moved the exposure slider, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. And really, that's almost always all I'll do globally. Now I'll start applying masks to the image. You'll notice I didn't do anything with presence, no vibrance, no saturation, nothing. And I usually don't. I'll jump right to masking. And for this type of image, I usually like to pick on the subject first. So I'll go to masking and I'll just select subject. And you can see that it selected the subject, but it over-selected it a little bit as well. You can see in the middle of the sculpture here, it has part of the sky. So I'm going to subtract from this subject mask the sky. And you'll see that once it does that, it has a much better selection. It's a lot tighter on the sculpture. I missed part of the pedestal over here, but I'm not really worried about it. I could add it with a brush, but I'm not going to worry about it. Usually what I do with these types of images, I like to then go to tone, and sometimes, not always, but I'll brighten it up a little bit. Then I'll go to color, and I'll add some saturation. In this case here, I mean, it was just kind of, gray, but there is some kind of rust color in there, so I'll increase the saturation. Then I'll go to effects, and I'll add some texture and some clarity in this case, and not all the time, but sometimes then I'll go to detail and add some sharpness. So it really depends on my subject, what I'll do, but for this specific subject, that's what I did. Next, I want to do something with the sky. So I'm going to go to create a new mask and select the sky. And usually I like to add a little more drama to the sky. And I could go to tone and move contrast up, but I don't often do that. Every now and then I will. But I usually go to effects and I go right to clarity first. And I move that to the right. And sometimes I'll just bump up to haze just a little bit. And then I'll add some texture to it. That's usually all I do to the sky. And if I give you a before, after of the sky, there's before and there's after. So you can see I didn't do a lot, but it does have a dramatic effect, I think. So I think that's what I'll do to the sky. But As I recall when I was there, this was near sunset, and the sky had a little more warmth in it than what my camera actually rendered. So I want to add some warmth to the highlights, and I'll often do this if I have a sunset or a sunrise. I'll add warmth to the highlights, and how I do that is with two types of masks. I'll go to Create Mask, and I'll select the sky again. Then what I'll do where it says this new mask, it's mask 3 is the one I just added. I'll click on the 3 dots, and I want to intersect this mask with a luminance range mask. When I click on that, eventually I'll get an eyedropper here. It just takes a second. And when I have the eyedropper here, what I'm able to do then is to click on any of the brightest parts, in this case, the brightest part of the sky right there. Now I'll turn the overlay back on by clicking there, and you can see that it's selected the brighter parts of the sky, but it has a little bit, I think, too much of the midtones selected as well. So I'll go to this luminance range slider, and I'll move this far left slider to the right, and it will start to bring the adjustment more to just the highlights. So what I did is I selected the sky. Then when you intersect that mask with another type of masks, the only part that will get masks is where the two masks overlap, and they happen to overlap on just those highlights. Now you may be wondering, why did I even select the sky mask? I could have just got this luminance mask and clicked there. Well, it would have selected stuff in the ground as well. So I didn't want any of the brighter parts of the ground selected. I just wanted the brighter parts in the sky. That's why I intersected it with the sky. So then what I'll do is I'll just go to color, and I'll go to temp, and I just warm it up. That's all I'll do. And maybe I'll go to tint, move that to left just a little bit. That's it. That's all I'll do. And here is a before and after. Before, after. And that's usually what I'll do, especially if it's a sunrise or a sunset. Now, I want to do something with the grasses. And there's all different ways I could select the grass. Unfortunately, there isn't an AI mask for land, but we could still do it. I could just get a brush and mask the brush, with a brush, but maybe I make it more complicated than I need to. What I'll do is I'll create a new mask, and I'll select the sky. Then I'll add to this mask the subject. Then I'll add to this mask a brush, and with the brush, I'll add this water. It's Lake Erie out here in the distance. So I'll just add this as well. I'm not going to be too fussy about it here, but usually I take my time and do a little better job than I'm doing for this video. All right, so we selected all of that out there, right? I don't know I have auto mask on. That's why it wasn't painting when I thought I was painting. All right, now if you have to remove, like I got maybe too much of this grass and I want to get a minus brush, just hold the Alt or Option key in, and then you'll get a minus brush, and you can subtract it from there. All right, say that's good enough. Now I need to invert this. Now if I just come over here and click invert, it won't work. It's not going to invert the entire mask. So what I need to do instead is I need to go up here where it says mask 4, click the 3 dots, and they need to invert the entire mask 4 by clicking there. Now you'll notice I just have the grass selected. And now what I'll do is with this one, I'll go to tone, and I'll make it a little brighter. And I won't go to color and just increase saturation. I like to selectively increase saturation. So what I'll do is I'll go to point color, and I'll get an eyedropper, and I'll get this darker green grass. Click there. And then what I'll do is I'll make that more saturated and maybe a little darker. Then I'll get this again, and I'll get this more golden grass there, and I'll make that a bit more saturated, and maybe that a little brighter as well. So you could see what I did there. So there's the before and the after. You can see it just gives it more pop. And really, I'm done with the image. Now, there are times when after I'm done with my masking, I may come back in and do something globally. In this case, I don't think I need to. Maybe I'd add, let's say, like a vignette or something like that. All right. So if I give you an entire before, after the image, there's before, and there's after, there's before, there's after. Let's go on to this other type of image. It's typically a landscape shot. It's going to have land in it and sky in it, not necessarily a strong subject, although it may have a subject in there that you do want to edit. So what I would do, again, globally, is if it needs noise reduction, I would do it. This image is an Nikon RAW file, as you can see, shot at ISO 64. Doesn't need any noise reduction as far as I'm concerned. So I didn't do that. I did lens corrections. I did crop it slightly. I just didn't want all that sky in there. See that, like, there's a lot of sky. So I just cropped it a little bit, not much. And I was happy with the Adobe color profile, I was happy with the white balance. And for tone, all I did were these 4 sliders, and that was all I've done so far. So I do want to do something with the barn. I want the barn to be more noticeable. So I will go to masking and I'll select subject. But what often happens is if the subject isn't larger in the scene, like the sculpture was, it won't get a good selection. You can see it only got this side of the barn, it got the silo, and then it got this bush over here for some reason. So this isn't going to work. So I need to delete this mask. Instead, what I'll do is I'll get an object mask. And with the object mask, there's 2 different types. You could use a brush, or you could just paint or just draw like a marquee around something. In this case, I'm going to use the brush, and I'm going to go to the silo part first. And I'm just going to try to select the silo here. Let it do that selection. That looks pretty good. Now I want to add to it. I want to add the rest of the barn. So I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to again do Objects, and then we're going to do the rest of the barn here, like this. Oops, I kind of screwed up a little bit, but like this, and see how that does. And it missed this little part right here, so we need to add again, and we need to Objects. So we just want to make sure that we get all of the barn in there. That looks pretty good. Okay, fine. Now I mentioned I want to make the subject, even though it's smaller in the scene, a little more noticeable. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to Tone, and I'm just going to make it a little brighter. And I could just go probably to Color and increase saturation. Although what I often do, I will do that a little bit, is I'll go to Point Color, and I'll get the eyedropper, and I'll click on the side of the barn here, and get a color and increase saturation that way. And maybe even make that a little brighter. So I'm just making it a little more noticeable. That's it. So that's one mask, although it was multiple subject masks, or object masks, I'm sorry. It was multiple object masks that I added together to get this single mask for the barn. Then what I'll do is I'll work on the sky next. So I'll select the sky. And here, again, I'll probably just jump right down to effects, and I'll go to clarity, and I'll add some texture, and I'll add not that much dehaze, maybe this much dehaze. Now, in this case, I don't need to do it, but I'm going to show you what I do sometimes, sometimes the blue isn't dark enough for me. In this case, I think it's perfect. But if it weren't, what I would do is I would create a new mask, and I would select the sky, and I would intersect that mask with a color range adjustment. And again, I'll turn off the overlay for a second, you'll get an eyedropper, and you could click on, in this case, the blue sky, like there. Then you could go to this refine slider. Let me turn the overlay back on. And you could move this slider to the left, so you could kind of just relegate this adjustment more to the blue sky, this lighter blue sky that was over in the lower part. And then I'll go to Tone, and I'll make it darker, not that dark. And then I'll go to Color, and I'll increase saturation. So I do that sometimes. I didn't really need to do it for this image, but you see the idea of what's done. Now, I want to do something with the grasses. Actually, when I was driving by this scene, there was a busy highway actually behind me. Caught my attention was all the yellow. I thought it was yellow dandelions at first, but when I got up close to it, I noticed they were all buttercups. It was really very beautiful. So I want to really make it look like I noticed when I drove by. So I need to do adjustments to that. So what I'll do is I'll get a new mask, and I'm going to select the sky, Now this one I could click invert right here because I just have the single mask, so I'll click invert. Now it's selected everything but the sky. I really don't want to do anything though to that barn and that silo that's part of the barn. So I'm going to subtract from this an objects mask. So we're going to just paint. I'm going to try to do this all at once, meaning I'm not going to do the silo separate from the actual barn. We'll come across and try to do everything at once. Really even don't have to paint everything in the middle here, but I sometimes do if it's not a lot of painting. Let's see how that works there. That worked pretty good. We got rid of the barn from the adjustment. So what I'll do is I'll go to tone and I'll make it just a little brighter. And then again, I won't go to color and just increase saturation. I kind of like to do it piecemeal. I'll go to point color. I'll get the darker green grass there, and I'll increase saturation of that, and I'll bring that a little darker. Now, if the yellows weren't so bright, I would get another point color for the yellows, but they're so bright I really don't need to do anything. But if they weren't, I would do that, and I would probably make them brighter, but in this case, they look fine. And that's that. So here is before all these masks, and there's after all the masks. And if I close down masking and just give you an entire before after the image, there's the original raw file and there's the edited raw file. Now, the next image is a wildlife image. Now, before I show you what I do here, I would ask you real quickly to take a look at my homepage or my website, anthonymorganti.com. If you look at the top, I have some free keyboard shortcuts. They're downloadable PDFs that you could print at home for Lightroom Classic, Photoshop, On1 Photo Raw, and Luminar Neo. I also have a complete course on Lightroom Classic. This is over 60 videos, hours and hours of training. Each of the videos has a PDF outline that you could download, and you could download all the raw files I used in the videos themselves. I also have some Lightroom presets, some Lightroom profiles. I have some other stuff too, some On1 presets, Luminar presets, and some LUTs. In the description below this video, I'll have a link to my website, and I'll have any discount codes there for what I have sale. I currently have Lightroom Classic on sale, and I think I have On1's presets on sale, but I'll have those discount codes listed in the description below this video. Now, wildlife shot. Again, I would, if it needs noise reduction, do noise reduction. If I hit the I key a couple times on this, you'll see that I did do noise reduction on this image. Do it right away. Then what I'll do is I'll go to the basic tab, choose my profile, adjust my white balance if needed. Didn't need to do it here. I'll adjust tone. You can see I brought exposure up a little and highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. So those were the global adjustments I did. I did crop this image as well. If I open up the crop tool, you can see that kind of a weird crop. This flamingo was doing something kind of bizarre to me. It was getting drinks of water, so it kept putting its head down in the water, but it would fly its head up like super fast as it was drinking the water. So it was going down, grabbing water, flinging its head up, and the water was spraying off its beak every time it did that. And I wanted to capture it right when it brought its head to the apex, to the very top. And it was really difficult to do. I just kind of focused on a spot and then hoped that I had the head of the flamingo in the frame when I pressed the shutter when it flew its head up. And I got lucky and got it almost in the middle. Well, not really, but after cropping, it's perfectly in the middle. So I did the tone, I did the crop. Now I'll do masking. Notice I didn't do anything with texture, clarity, dehaze. I didn't do anything here with detail. You can see everything's turned right off. Nothing done there. So what I'll do now is I'll go to masking and I'll mask the subject first. Now you can see here it over-selected. It got part of the background. So I'll go to subtract and I'll select the background. So I'm going to subtract the background. It improved it a little, but not that much. So I really want my adjustment only to affect the animal, in this case, the flamingo. So I'm going to subtract again, but this time I'm going to have to use a brush and do it manually. I'm going to turn on auto mask. Auto mask will, when you click, like right here, it's going to look at the tone, texture, and color right where you clicked, and it will try to only apply the brush stroke to similar tone, texture, and color. So hopefully I won't encroach upon that beak. Now, if I do make a mistake and I get a chunk of that beak like that, I could take care of that, and I'll show you in a moment. So we'll do the best we can here very quickly, because I know this is probably very boring to watch me do this. So we'll get a bare brush here and come down in here. I'm not going to worry about those drops. All right, so we're going to come in here and in here. Now, if you do make a mistake like I did up there, what you can do is, instead of trying to get an add brush or anything like that, just hold in the Alt Option key, Alt PC Option if you have Mac, and you get a plus brush. And then you could come in and add to your selection. Right, so if you messed up, you can fix it. All right. I'm getting fussy, but that's good. All right. Then what I'll do now is I'll go right to effects usually, and I'll add that texture and some clarity. Now, if I do need to, sometimes I will make it a little brighter, but in this case, I don't think I need to do that. But if I did, I would go to tone and increase exposure. So I added that texture, clarity. I'll go to detail, and I'll add some sharpening. Then what I'll do is I'll add another mask for the background. I want the background to not be noticed. So what I'll do is I'll select the background, and then what I'll do is I'll go to tone, and I'll make the background darker usually. So it makes the subject, in this case the flamingo, stand out a little more. Then I'll go to color, and I'll suck away some of the color from that background by moving this slider to the left. Now, I'm not going to make it black and white. I'm just going to make it less colorful so that the subject, the flamingo, is the most colorful thing in the frame. So everyone will notice the flamingo. And I'm done. So there's before, the unedited raw file, although it includes the crop, and there's the after. And if you want to see the masking, the before and after on the masking, there's before I did any masking, there's after I did masking, before masking, and after masking. Now, finally, what if you have an image with people in it? Well, same thing. If it needs noise reduced, reduce noise right away. In this case, it didn't. It's ISO 64. Didn't need it. I did lens corrections because it was a DSLR. I went to the basic tab and I edited highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. And that was it. So now I'll do masking. And I like to do the masking to the people right away. So I'll go to the masking tool. It's going to detect the people. On my computer, on my iMac, sometimes this takes a really long time, although it went very quickly now. But the graphics card I use, for some reason, it takes a long time to find the people. On my MacBook, it goes within seconds. In this case, it went pretty quick. So what I'll do is I'll just pick a person. So we're going to pick person 1. And usually I like to do anything I'm going to do with their skin. Now, her skin's fine. But what I will do is I'll go to facial skin, in this case, and body skin, and create a mask. And typically what I'll do is I'll just brighten it up just a little bit, just a little brighter. That's it. Every now and then I'll go to color and I'll just add a little saturation, just a very tiny bit. You want to be careful you don't go too far. All right, just a little bit, make it a little bit more colorful, and that's it. Now I need to create a new mask. It's going to be a new person mask. It's going to be her again. And this time I'll go right to her teeth. We'll create the mask. Then I'll go to this drop down where it says preset, and I'll go down towards the bottom, and you can see there's iris enhance, there's soften skin. In her case, I mentioned her skin's fine. If it wasn't, I would soften the skin light. That's usually what I'll use. All right, but this time the mask is on her teeth, so that doesn't apply. We're going to go right to teeth whitening. That maybe looks a little unnatural, so I'll go to tone. You can see how the preset teeth whitening brought exposure up. I'll just back that off a little bit. I could go to the amount here and back it off there as well, but I'll just back it off there. Okay, I think that I might do the irises too on her eyes, so I'll create a new mask, and it's going to be a people mask, and it's going to be person 1, and it's going to be iris and pupil, like that. We'll create the mask. We'll go to this drop down again, and there is an iris enhance preset, so we'll click that. That looks pretty good. So now we'll work on our next person. I'll do this as quickly as possible. We'll select people. We'll select person 2. Right? We'll do facial skin and we'll do body skin. That's usually what I'll do when I want to brighten the skin. We'll go to create mask. We'll go to exposure and just make that just a little brighter. And like I said, we did before, we'll go to saturation, just turn that up just a little bit. And if you feel compelled to soften the skin, you could do that as well, or you could apply a new mask to soften the skin. In this case, I don't think it needs to. I'm going to create a new mask. It's going to be a people mask. Pick person 2 again. And this time again, like I did before, we'll go to teeth, create that mask, go to this drop down, go to, where is it? Teeth whitening. Might be looks a little bit too white. You could go to the amount slider here instead of that, like I did before, and just back this off. Like that. I still think it might be too bright. All right. Now, let's just do his irises while we're here. But you could see how you could do any part of their face, their body, their clothing, stuff like that. You could do it with the people masking. So we'll go to person 2 again, and we'll go to, where is it? Iris and pupil. We'll create the mask, and we'll go to our drop down, and we'll do iris enhance. And that looks good. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, I'm done with masking the people. What about that background, though? Remember when we had the wildlife, in case of the flamingo, I wanted to make the background less noticeable. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to create a mask, and it's going to be the background. It may take a second to find the background, but it did. There it goes. And then what we'll do is we'll go right to exposure, and we'll make it darker. And I'll go to color, and I'll bring some of the saturation out. Not a lot, just a little bit. You can't make it look like unnatural. Now, what I used to do is I would go to effects, and I would go to clarity and move that to left, and I'd move texture left. Typically not all the way, but I'd blur it out a little more than maybe I did in camera. In this case, it looks okay. But now there is a new global adjustment tool in Lightroom. So I'm done with the background masking. If I did want to blur the background a little more, I would go to lens blur, and I would click apply. And then what it does, it analyzes the image, and it finds the subject, and then it will add the blur to the background. So you can see how it did a good job. But in this case, my in-camera blur was fine. I didn't really need to do this, I don't think. But you can do it if you want. Then I might finish it off with a vignette. That's it. That's done. Now, globally, when I look at the image, maybe I do want to come in. Maybe it's like I could add some vibrance to it. And globally, just because you did the masking and you think you're done, but if it doesn't look right to you, you could come in and move some of these global adjustments. You want to add more clarity, something like that. Feel free to do it. But that's what I do with masking. Typically, is I do now most of my adjustments with masking, as you could see in these different scenarios I offered you with these 4 images. But that's the great thing about post-processing. There's really no right or wrong ways. There's ways that don't look as good as others, maybe to some people, but maybe they appeal to other people. And there are, ways I think you could express yourself with post-processing that could make images unique to you. And that's what I do with masking. Nothing really too out of the ordinary, but hopefully you learned something from this video and you could help it. You could use it to help you utilize masking in any version of Lightroom more effectively. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.